Today we're going over a bunch of red flags specific to online coaching and how you as a potential client can make better choices when it comes to choosing the right coach. So just to give some structure to this list of red flags, I'll go over this in order. So from your time before coaching to your time during coaching, followed by the transition and the conclusion of the services. Let's get this one out of the way super quick. Red flag number one. To know if your coach is credible, obviously you want to check his credentials. If all he can give you is fourth place amateur novice bodybuilding show held in a random small basketball court out of 5 competitors 10 years ago, I wouldn't trust that coach with my health on the line. I wouldn't trust that coach with my training or my nutrition. If you're shopping around for a coach and he or she clearly has too many clients, I would recommend staying away. In my experience as a coach, once you get past something like maybe 20, maybe 30 clients, it starts getting a little bit more difficult when it comes to managing your clients. Especially with when you're considering sufficient care, sufficient detail. There's less time to get your check-ins done, obviously, and it gets so much more confusing when you're trying to remember the responses of each client. That said, I guess there is like sort of a safe upper limit when it comes to client loads. I think that would be around 40 to 50 clients. Any more than that for a single coach, this is different if you're like a group of coaches, but for a single coach, that means they're probably, just watering down their services or throwing in tiers and maybe only giving the real coaching to their star clients. There's definitely a possibility that they're giving everyone an equal high quality service, but in most cases, I would doubt it. Now, another red flag is if your prospective coach does not screen you prior to starting his or her coaching services. If that's the case, it's likely they're just in it for the money. So they probably don't care about you or your goals or your health. So if you're a coach, you're supposed to take responsibility for your clients, which means you need at least some understanding of their daily life, of their work, their lifestyle, their hobbies, as well as maybe any prior injuries, the food and the exercises they like and dislike, and especially their goals and expectations in getting you as their coach. So if you can talk to your coach, make sure to ask them about how their coaching is like. I could be wrong here, maybe I shouldn't be forcing my coaching ideals on others, but in my opinion, coaching needs to factor in the individual. So coaching needs to be based on the client's context. And in my opinion, there is a difference between coaching and giving out cookie cutter templates. There is a difference between coaching and sending out a program through group chats or through SMS where everyone gets the same thing for the day or the same thing for the week. If, let's just say from the start, you already know this potential coach doesn't really value individualization, either through their content or this reverse screening thing, I would at least personally stay away. Just to add to that, if you ask this so-called coach about his methods, and he comes up with very black and white answers like, as a coach, I'll never let you eat rice, or if you're my client, you have to do fasted cardio, or basically anything that starts with a you must, or tells you to only do this or to never do that, I would look for other options. I guess for some coaches and even some clients, flexibility isn't really that important. Sometimes people just want the most straightforward answer with the least amount of thinking. But I can say after years of coaching that being able to work with ranges, with a little bit of flexibility goes such a long way, especially with building a long-term and effective coach-client relationship. Now, assuming you've already enrolled with an online coach, and you receive your program, you get your sheets, you get your instructions. Make sure to read everything thoroughly. And if you find anything that bothers you or confuses you, make sure to ask your coach. If your new online coach can't answer these questions and they can't provide any reasoning behind why he set it up that way, or why he makes certain changes to your program, then it's likely that your coach doesn't actually know what he or she is doing and is probably just going along with whatever bro science he's been fed the past few years. Likewise, if your coach has been doing the same thing for 5, 10, maybe even 20 years and has never made any changes to the way he trains or to the way he coaches, and still relies on already debunked pseudoscience, I'd consider that a red flag. So I don't think they necessarily need to be updated with the current evidence, but if you think they've stopped trying to learn, if they've stopped trying to grow in this industry that's still very, very young, that is not a good sign. Next red flag here is if you're not getting the desired results and your coach is putting all the blame on you and you alone, that's another massive red flag. Let me just throw in an example here. Let's say you're cutting down and your coach gives you a refeed every Sunday, but you're already out like every Friday with your family or with your friends. So you end up taking your refeed on Sundays, but you also end up overeating on Fridays. Don't get me wrong, it's your fault technically for not adhering to the plan, but it's also your coach's fault for not addressing the issue, for not just moving the refeeds to Friday instead. And also you're both at fault for not communicating about the problem. Which leads me to my next point. If your coach doesn't reply to you when you have concerns and only sends you a DM once a month to bug you about your payments, leave immediately. Again, unless they're calling themselves something like a resistance training programmer instead of a coach, they're still a coach, you know. Which means you should be getting responses and you should be getting feedback on your lifting videos and your progress pics. And you should be getting the necessary adjustments to your programs based on your progress. If you're making an effort to communicate to your coach and your coach doesn't give a fuck, then I would suggest, once again, to just leave. Next thing to look out for if you're currently being coached is whether or not your coach gives a shit about your well-being. If not, that's 100% an obvious red flag. There's just no way around it. I mean, I sort of understand why some coaches don't really dig deep into your mental and your emotional health, your external stressors or your day-to-day problems. That's arguably not part of our scope. But really, if you're a bodybuilding prep coach, all of these factors are at play in determining the course of action when it comes to training and nutrition. All you really need to ask as a coach is something like, can you handle a bigger deficit? Or are you feeling any injuries or any discomfort in your joints? Or even something as simple as, how are you doing this week? And I think that just makes all the difference in understanding where or why potential setbacks or potential problems may arise. Also, just going back to that previous point regarding coaching scopes, it's a red flag when you see an online lifting coach try to act like an expert on topics like mental health or eating disorders or injury rehab or anything similarly complex, especially if they don't have a degree or a certification in that particular subject. Consult a professional instead. And speaking of your well-being, look out for unsustainable practices. If you feel like your coach is throwing in too much of anything for no good reason, I'd recommend to step out before you burn out or you get injured. I'd understand if you were on a tight schedule with competing and you needed to crash diet or do excessive cardio to make the deadlines. I've done this for my clients, but always with their consent and only after I've laid out the potential drawbacks and consequences of such an approach. If at any point it feels unreasonable, for example, being given the same program or the same plan as a competitor despite just asking for casual fat loss as a Gen Pop client, or if you feel any injuries coming up and your so-called coach still makes no effort to adjust the program for you, know that there are a ton of coaches out there who actually value sustainability and know that there are other methods with less pain and likely more gain. And finally, let's just move on to the post-coaching red flags. If you've wrapped up the services and you as a client don't feel like you've learned anything from the experience, it probably wasn't good coaching. I'm not sure if it was coaching at all. In my opinion, more than just giving someone a program, you're supposed to be teaching your clients how to get through his or her fitness journey without you, As a coach, you're directly and indirectly supposed to be making your clients more independent. The next one might be sort of more arguable, I guess. So technically, once you've concluded your coaching, you should be done. You and your coach technically don't have any more responsibilities towards each other. So instead of just saying it's a red flag to throw your client away immediately after your coaching services are over, I'm probably just gonna say it's an absolute green flag if your coach provides you with some notes, some guidelines, some guidance towards the end so you can transition into, again, training independently. I've seen some competitors hire coaches for their shows, and immediately after the show, once the coaching period has ended, give zero advice on how to deal with yung crucial post-show period, which I think, in my opinion, is one of the most difficult parts of prep to handle alone. I've seen with my own prep clients that even just telling them something like, hey man, you gotta gain X pounds by this, by the next 6 weeks, or develop this weak point while I'm not coaching you, and giving them some sort of direction as they transition out can make a huge difference. And that is all for today. More red flags in my head, but this list could go on forever. So if you have anything you want to add to the list, or if you have any juicy stories you want to share, just leave that in the comments. If you learned something from this video or felt like it cleared some things up in your search for the right coach, feel free to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next videos.